afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this peer instruction in the course 1D V525. Hands up, how many of you have been on a peer instruction before? One. Yep. It's a new concept for most of you then. I will soon explain the concept. You will need a smartphone or a computer, and you need to visit that address. For those of you watching on YouTube, you find the address in Slack as well. If we have anyone on YouTube, please write in Slack if the sound is okay, because I'm a little bit unsure, but I hope it will work. So before we start, let's just look at a short brief, where are we in the course, what are we supposed to do, because now things are starting to happening in the course. So we have concluded the first part of the course with a hand-in, was it last week, the week before that? You have made a release on your GitHub accounts on the first examination assignment. We are looking at those right now, so I know that some of you have gotten feedback and some of you has heard nothing. That is totally fine. We are 4 different teachers looking at this, and it will all be done before next examination. However, the first examination assignment doesn't have anything to do with the second one. So I mean, you will not get feedback on the first one that are useful in the second one, anyways. So, but we will look at everybody's this week or the beginning of next week. If, as I said before, if you hand in this one late, we will look at it, just make a release, and we will look at it as soon as possible. So you can hand in the first assignment today if you like. Moving on to the second part of the course and the exercises. I've told you in the vlogs that do the exercises, they are important. But now it's time to transition to the first examination assignment. The due date for that one is Wednesday, 7:30. So you have a week, less than a week, to complete that assignment. And that is because if we look in the schedule for next week, it looks something like this. First of all, note that I added there were no tutoring session this Friday, but I've added one. I am completely busy because we have examinations in Kalmar both Thursday and Friday. However, our teacher assistants will be present at that one. But I will not be able to be there on Slack. But you can always, ask questions on Slack, and I'll try to answer them as fast as possible. Next week, we have this big examination day. You will be able to book a time slot for this day. You will be able to do that Monday. So I will release time slots on Monday. You could book a time when you are finished with the assignment. So please do not book a time if you are not finished with the assignment. And if you book a time slot and of any reason want to not participate in the examination, please free yourself from that time slot so that then another one can book instead. We are 4 teachers. However, John is pretty busy this day, so he might take we might add time slots to the Thursday as well. And you are only booking 30 minutes. So 30 minutes of this whole day is booked for you. On those oral hearings, we will start off by asking questions to you that you're supposed to be able to answer or reason about together with the examiner. The peer instruction today is to prepare you to that examination, so the questions on this peer instruction today is quite similar to the ones that are showing up on the oral hearing. So being here today is a good thing to prepare yourself for that one. At least me and Tobias will be in Växjö. I guess Mats will be in Kalmar over Slack. Even if you are a campus student, you could always do it over Slack if you like. But you will see that when you book the time slot, if it's here in Växjö or if it's a Slack time. Questions? You make a release on the second assignment, just as you did on the first assignment. So please do a release. That's like your way of telling us that you are finished with the assignment, or at least have a working assignment. Then if you make a new release, just update the state of the application. Yep.
Should the release work on the GitHub page or just on a...
Yeah. So in this and going forward, you will not use GitHub pages. So it's just make it work locally, and that is fine. So no, we will not publish those solutions. If you don't, I mean, you're free to do that if you like, but for the assignment, we will download it and run it locally. Okay, switching over to the peer instruction. So please, if you haven't already, visit that address, and you find the address in Slack as well. We will. I will start by just introducing this concept because it's good to know. We will do this in this course and the follow-up course. We do this a lot in Kalmar. So the method is, I think, from Harvard on mechanical engineering. I think they started this I think it was in the 90s. So the theory is that if the student is getting involved in like the theory and have the ability to discuss topics with other students, the results on the exams will be better. And they have made studies on this, and they have shown that equal classes where one class used peer instruction, one didn't, and the class with peer instructions got really good results compared to the other group. I will show you a question. It will show up on your device and you vote. It's totally anonymous. You don't log in anywhere. I cannot see what you are voting. And that is important. It's totally anonymous. If you don't know the answer, guess. Make a guess. What do you think is the best answer for this question? And you guess. Because if only the ones who knows the answer answers, it will look to me that, oh, the group knows this topic, and it might not be the case. So please, everybody, just vote. If you don't know, just take your best guess. If 70% of you as a group votes for the correct answer, I will skip that question and we will move on to the next one. However, if a lower percentage than 70% gets the correct answer, we will have a group discussions, and we will do it like, yeah, the 3 or 4 or 5 students sitting closest together. You discuss in small groups for, say, 3 minutes, and then you vote again. Hopefully, the ones that knows the answer has convinced the ones that didn't, or had a wrong impression of a question. You will be convinced. So that's the theory, at least. It usually works quite good. So we will jump right into it, and I will start off by a simple trial question. So you should probably be looking at something like that right now, and when I release the question, it will show up. If it doesn't, just refresh the browser. Sometimes on the first question it's a little bit laggy. Okay, I would like to know what the Swedish word used for occasionally meeting up and having a cup of coffee. What is the correct word for that? It's probably quite easy for most of you. Is it kräftskiva, pyjamasparty, fika eller parkbänk? Did you get the question on your screen? Perfect. You will only be able to vote once, so. It's quite a long time with 1 minute for this question, but when it's code, it will be quite stressful. So 15 seconds to vote. 10. Okay, yeah. In this case, we don't need a discussion because if we look at the result, we can see that, whoops, this is so hard. We can see that 86% of you answered fika, which is, I guess, the correct answer. Parkbänk, it's something it's a bench in the park. Pyjamas party is mainly the same in English, I guess. Pyjamas party. Or kräftskiva is crayfish party. A lot of parties. Yeah. But in this case, I mean, it's totally clear that as a group, you know the answer to this question, so there is no need to have a discussion. Okay, now we will start with the real questions, and those will be probably a little bit more tricky. You will get 1 minute for the first question. And those are questions mainly for the second part of the course. Okay? What is true regarding communication over HTTP? And this is a multiple choice question, so one or more answers could be correct. "15 seconds, need to vote now, and if you're on distance, you need to be 5 seconds quicker than on campus." Yeah. This looks quite convincing. The majority knows that it's the client that initiates the request to the server and the server sends a response back. Nothing more to say about that one. Next question. What is an example of an HTTP method? 1 minute. "15 seconds, time to vote." Interesting. We actually need a discussion on this matter. So please, in smaller groups, I think you'll have to move back 1 step. in smaller groups, discuss this question and vote again. I will start a new timer for 2 minutes on this one. So discuss for 2 minutes and answer again. And for you on distance, this discussion part is probably quite hard. Sometimes we actually use discuss to have a discussion, but since you're quite few or not so many taking this course on distance, I think you can either you can start a call in Slack if you like to discuss it with someone. That would be fine. Ten seconds, please vote. Yeah. So this was better. We take a look at the results. Seems like the one that knew the answer to the question convinced the other ones. So yes, an example of an HTTP method is delete. What other examples of HTTP methods do we have? Get, post, put, patch. What was the one you said before? No, I'm not sure. Well, there are actually a lot that you have mentioned. Information as well, I think. Let's see if we have them. Yeah. Head, put, delete, trace. You said trace. Yeah, good. Connect. Yeah, well, haven't used them, but yes, delete is maybe not in this course. Delete is that important, but in the next course it is. So working with HTML forms in HTML code, you will see that get and post are the ones that you will use. However, when making API calls to other servers, delete is one HTTP method that is quite important for deleting a resource, for instance. What is 200 okay? Yeah, the status code of the call. So the server says everything's okay. So the code is 200. Applications/JSON.
Part of the header of the post message, so the server knows what we are sending to him.
Yeah. Content type, MIME type, tells, as you said, what information is being broadcasted between the server and the client. And the XML HTTP request, it is a method. It's actually a method on the window object, so it's part of the API in the browser. So you can use that method to create requests to a server from your client code. I want you all to note that you will probably see in later code examples, but in standard.js, I've gotten some questions about this. In standard.js, you need to write window.xml HTTP request if you're supposed to use that method. It's global in the browser, so you can always use it, but standard.js says that if you want to use that, you should explicitly say that it's on the window object, so you need to write window.xml HTTP request. Okay, good. Next one, if we don't have any questions. Oh, this is a tricky one, maybe. Let's see. Which browser component is responsible for drawing on the screen? 1 minute. Ah. "15 seconds, high time to vote." Good. You will have a 3-minute discussion in groups starting now. You have 20 seconds to vote. So I got the question, is this a trick question? It's intentionally made for making you to have something to discuss around if you haven't already. So it's not a trick question. It's actually, how many have read the article that I posted as a reference on the DOM lecture? Was actually an article or journal, was a journal article about all of those components inside of the browser and what their responsibilities were. This question is just to check if you have actually read that article. It's really hard to find like a terminology around some of the components in the browser, because some are saying that this component is this component and mixing them together and having them as one component. Sometimes the browser engine is responsible for everything. In some text you can find browser engine, rendering engine separated. So let's see. Who voted for UI backend? Wasn't anymore. Because that is actually the correct one in that case. So, comes down to a couple of things. First of all, which browser component is responsible for drawing on the screen? That is one thing to look out for. So, many of you have answered the rendering engine, and that is pretty close, though, because the browser engine is the one that is responsible for like orchestrating the page, like looking at the HTML, seeing that, okay, we need an image here, okay, we will tell the network stack to fetch that image, okay, we need a CSS, okay, fetch that CSS and get all the resources, and then the rendering engine will kick in and basically render the page. Seeing that, okay, the image is here, the text should be on that side, how should everything be laid out on the page? When that is done, the rendering engine tells the UI backend to draw on the screen, to actually put pixels on the screen. So, but I mean, this is not a question that we will ask on the exam, because it's a little bit, I mean, if you read another article, they might say that the browser engine is responsible for all of this, basically. So the network stack is quite obvious what that does. The JavaScript engine as well, it interprets the JavaScript, and together with the rendering engine, it might change the behavior or the layout of the page. But that was to get the discussion going, actually. Okay, multiple choice question now. Why do we want styling to be done in our, why do we not want styling to be done in our JavaScript files? Fifteen seconds. Yeah, was probably a pretty easy one. Good. I have nothing more to say about that one, actually. Good. Moving on. So, now we are in a shift of how to actually load the JavaScript into our HTML. There has been kind of like 15 years of consensus of how to do it, and now we are in a shift. So that is why my wording is, why was it recommended to place script tags at the bottom of the HTML file? Multiple question, 1 minute. Fifteen seconds. Good. I will have a discussion about this later on. I have a tendency on these peer instructions to say too much so that I answer the next question, and I don't want to do this in this case. But yes, loading of the script will not block rendering of HTML. If you loaded the old way the script in the head, the rendering of the HTML will stop until the script is loaded and executed, and that made quite a bad user experience. The user like staring at the blank page for a second or so. The DOM is not rendered before we try to manipulate it. That is true. Maybe not the main reason, because you can get around that by listening on events when the DOM is ready. However, a side effect of placing the script in the bottom is that the DOM is loaded, and you can start manipulating the DOM right away in the script. However, there are better ways of doing that now, and we might get to that soon. So, this is a quickie. I will actually, you will only get 30 seconds on this one. Which object is the global object in the browser? Fifteen seconds. Two minutes discussion starting now. Go ahead and vote. You're actually a little bit different from the other groups I've had in Växjö, since you're quite a lot of senior students in the third grade. Those students tend to not be convinced by others. They are quite strong in their belief that they are correct. However, when we do this with the first graders, they tend to do more like you do, that actually listen to the other ones and changing their answers. And in this case, almost 100% for window. So starting with the document. It could feel like the document is the global object in Java when writing JavaScript in the browser, because you all the time you write document dot create element and so on. I know what you will. Yep, we will get to that, and so on. However, since window actually is the global object, document is a property on the window object. So you could just as well write window dot document dot get element by ID. But to not, because you don't want to write window all the time, they have made it so that you could skip that. What will happen is actually that, say that you are forgetting inside of a function, you forget to declare a variable, for instance. You're not writing let. What happened earlier on was that this function or this property will actually end up on the window object. And when you try to reach something in the browser, like the XML HTTP request object, then the browser will start looking in the function that you're in, look for a property or method called XML HTTP request. If it don't find it, it will go to the next upper function that our function is living inside of. We'll try to find the XML HTTP request object, and it will continue until it will reach the window object, and then it will probably in this case find the XML HTTP request object. So window is the global object in the browser. Object is the prototype, which should actually be a capitalized O as well. The object is like the prototype object. If you're creating new objects, they will have the prototype of an object, more like this in Java as well, where object is the base of all objects. Yes?
In our case, we are using the document object to manipulate our own web page. And if it's under the window, which is basically for the whole browser, could we manipulate a different web page than our own?
Yes. So the question is, since document is inside of the window object, could we try to manipulate another document on that window object? And yes, that was what you did a lot when you had pop-ups and stuff. Then you could actually reach those pop-ups and communicate between a pop-up window and your source document by doing things like that. However, it's not that commonly used anymore, since well, pop-up windows we don't want to use, so that is why. The same thing when working with frames. So if you were working with the old, which is now banned more or less, but working with frames, you could also use the window object to get around, to get to the different frames. However, today, not as much, no. There are those, might be special cases when it comes to no. Module, this is a tricky one, no one answered that, but since we are using modules now, that throws things around, because inside of a module, things will not stick to the window object anymore. It will actually stick to the module and not pollute the window object if you're inside of a module. That is a much better way of doing things. A lot of bugs in JavaScript applications comes down to that properties are being set on the window object and overridden on the window object when you are not wanting to do that actually. But why I have this question is that you will hear this a lot. You will hear that window is the global object. The truth is getting a little bit sketchy when we're working with modules. However, I would still argue that when we say the global object in the browser, it's the window object that we are referring to. We can do one more question before the break. Two more questions before the break, actually. Quick question, 30 seconds. Can we use node modules, modules.export, out of the box in the browser? Can we use node modules out of the box in the browser? 30 seconds. Refresh the page if it doesn't work. Ten seconds. Don't whisper the answer to the other ones. Hmm. 2 minutes discussion. Fifteen seconds, start voting. This one was symmetric, at least. Okay, remember that one. I'll get back to that. You will not have fika yet. So, 30 seconds. Can we use ECMAScript modules export out of the box in the browser? Yes or no? Can we use ECMAScript modules out of the box in the browser? 10 seconds. Of course, this depends on where is my highlight the correct answer button. Strange. Oh, I have not told the program which answer is correct, actually. That's why. Yes, we can use ECMAScript modules out of the box in the browser, and that is actually what you are doing in the exercises and the assignment. However, this is quite a new browser feature, so if you're using Internet Explorer, for instance, no, you cannot. You can, though, in the major browsers in the newer versions. And the thing you do is that you use the keyword module when you tell the browser what type of script this is, and then it will be loaded using ECMAScript modules. And then you can import methods from other modules and do this all in the browser without the need of using an external tool at all. However, if we get back to the question before, could you use node modules inside of the browser? No, you cannot, because node modules are used in the runtime environment known as Node. So we are using that on a web server, for instance. So Node are sharing the same JavaScript engine with the browser, in many cases being V8, for instance in Edge and Chrome and Opera. But the module handling system is different anyways, even if you're using V8. So in the browser, it's ECMAScript modules. In Node, it's Node modules with require. However, there are initiatives to kind of, and I think you can already use it in Node, to use ECMAScript modules in Node. And I would be surprised if the future is not to use ECMAScript modules everywhere, but we're not there yet. Question?
But like the question was if we can use them out of the box in the browser, not when we are developing for the browser. So like if we are using them for developing, yes, we have to install them first, because we have to install them with the npm like we're doing in the exam. But if we're just using the browser, we don't have to install anything, we can just use them.
Yes, ECMAScript modules you can use directly, but not Node modules. They need, for the Node modules to work, we need to use a tool like Webpack. So in the exercises, we actually got both methods working. So you are loading the script using ECMAScript modules in the head section of the page. However, there is a fallback at the bottom of the page, which is using it's actually using on the back end, when we develop, we are using Node modules for that one. However, since Node modules will not be able to be executed in the browser, those Node modules are pre-compiled into one big pile of JavaScript without modules. And that is what we are serving to the browser and what the browser interprets. But there are no modules in that code at all. But in the ECMAScript module version, the modules are loaded inside of the browser and handled by the browser. If that was what you, yeah. Once again, we are in this breaking point. I mean, this is pretty much developing in JavaScript since 30 years back, or 25 at least. It's always been like this in the browser, that, oh, we have this way of doing it, but the newer way is this. We can't use them all the way, so we need a backup all the time because people are on older browsers. It's much, much easier when you're on the server side, because on the server side, you have total control of the environment. You can install the latest server, you can install the latest version of Node, and you can use all those fancy features. However, on the web, as Crockford said, it is a really hostile environment. We need to support different kind of browsers, and that is, of course, up to the company that you work on to decide what browsers should we be able to handle. But if you were supposed to release a product today, you could probably not rely on ECMAScript modules for that product. You would need some kind of a fallback. Okay, we will continue in 10 minutes. So 10 minutes break. Okay, welcome back. Got a question in the break that I would like to address concerning the oral hearings. On the oral hearing, we have the theory part as one part, and the second part of the oral hearing is looking at your application and how you solved that applications. So if you haven't finished the application, there is no point in reserving a spot for the oral hearing, because you will have to leave if the application isn't finished. However, when I say finished, that is, I mean, a broad spectrum. If you have bugs, if you're not completely finished with some of the features, for instance, if the high score isn't implemented in the assignment, then fine, you can still do the oral hearing. However, if the application doesn't work, then no, don't. If you don't manage to finish the application before deadline, Wednesday, then there is another resubmission 2 weeks later with a new oral hearing possibility, like a rewritten exam, basically. But we do it in the same form. Doesn't affect your grade in any way, but of course you will kind of lose tempo in the course if you're lagging behind. And if you don't finish the application next Wednesday, but finish it the week after, fine. But continue working on the course anyways. So continue with the third assignment then, and then do the second assignment on the retake. Okay? But if the application doesn't work at all, don't bother to take up a time slot. But if you have bugs or some features missing, you can do the oral hearing and you will get some complementary work to get it to work instead. Okay? Uh-oh. Wake up, please. Yes. Where were we? Okay, what is true? You will get 1 minute because it's a little bit more text to read. What is true? Multiple choice. Reload. Ten seconds vote. No discussion, but I will have a short discussion. The only way to debug in the browser is to use console log or alert. No, there is a debugger built into every major browser today. Wasn't like that 15 years ago, but today you have quite a good debugger in the browser that use that one. Sometimes the lazy way is to just do console log and see what's being presented. But please do not use alert if you don't have a specific reason to doing so. And that is because alert, as I've said in the lectures, blocks the executing thread. So everything freezes. Even the rendering engine cannot execute anything. So everything just freezes. Docker is needed to be able to build JavaScript applications for the browser. You haven't been using Docker in this course, but the web developers are, so that's why that is there. And no, you don't need to use Docker to be able to build JavaScript applications. The same applies for Webpack. You don't need Webpack to build JavaScript applications. However, it's a neat tool because it creates a web server for us so that we can look at our pages through that web server. And in many cases when it comes to the more advanced APIs in the browsers, you actually need to serve the page using a browser to be able to get those APIs working. Later on, we will also see that you will actually, in some cases, need HTTPS, so a certificate to be able to work against certain APIs. Often you are relieved when you're using localhost, but as soon as you're launching it on a public IP, you need HTTPS as well. But Webpacks, that is just a tool to help us develop things. JavaScript can run both on client and server, and yes, I said that also before. Soon we should start looking at some code. Slowly get there. Question 11, it's gone. Okay, 13 then. How do you create a new element node using JavaScript? And this is a multiple answer question as well. How do we create a new element node? – 15 seconds. Three-minute discussion starting now. 15 seconds, vote now. Okay. Did everybody get a chance to vote? Yep, perfect. This is good. Yeah, so more or less everybody is yeah, know that we can use create element to create new elements. That is like one of the basic things actually. To be working with the DOM and creating elements and be able to create text nodes. So text nodes are not of the element node type. Text node are their own kind of object. So that is usually what is inside of an element created by create element. This one is the tricky one, but you have been convinced during the discussions. You can clone nodes. This is a little bit tricky because you don't have the context in which this code is running, but you can use the clone node method to create new elements as well as a copy of an existing element. It will still be a new element. But, this one is totally made up. I don't even know what it means. Since you are here, I will give you a tip for the oral hearing. Everybody. And that is try to be quite comfortable with using like the basic DOM handling stuff. You don't need to know the whole API, but you need to know kind of the basics, how to create an element, how to like select an element, things like that. The more basic stuff. Okay. We will probably have a look soon on code. Not yet. 1 minute. Why do we use templates? Fifteen seconds. Two minutes. 15 seconds. Please vote. So, it's a better version of Flash. Good that no one thought that. Templates are cached in the browser. JavaScript code is not. That is not true. JavaScript code is cached in the browser. So we can rule that out. That doesn't mean that templates aren't cached, because they are probably cached as well, since they are part of the JavaScript code in many cases. Better performance than creating nodes using JavaScript. So this what I thought. Okay. However, this might be. I wouldn't kind of like say that it's totally wrong to answer that one, because depending on how you write your code, maybe the JavaScript interpreter is better at creating nodes from templates than you are by doing it manually. So it could actually be a performance question. But normally we wouldn't like count it as something that improves the performance. But if you write really sloppy JavaScript, maybe using templates would actually increase your specific performance in your application. However, when writing kind of a good, well-structured JavaScript, it shouldn't be a performance issue. However, I've spoken about this many times. I've tried to make you separate everything in the browser. The JavaScript separated from the content in HTML, separated from the styles in CSS. And templates helps us doing that. Maybe not. If we turn it upside down, we can say that we are using templates, we are mixing in HTML inside of the JavaScript files. And that is actually the opposite way around, that we are kind of starting to mix HTML and JavaScript as well. So that is both right and correct, depending on how we write our code. Okay, so if we just say that normally we are doing create element div, create element span, create element h1, and we do a lot of create elements inside of our JavaScript code, then breaking that and placing that in a template, that would separate it. However, in our case, in many cases, if you look at the custom elements that we create in the course, those templates are like a string in the top of the JavaScript file. And then we have HTML code and CSS code in the same file as the JavaScript, and that is actually not a good thing, because we are mixing them. And that is just because there is no consensus on how to load HTML resources dynamically. There were before, but because of performance issues, they skipped that model. Probably we will load templates using the import directive and modules, ECMAScript modules, in the future, but we are kind of in the middle right now. Apple tried their own way of doing it, but I haven't read anything about that since 2015, so I think it's quite dead. I think the consensus is that ECMAScript modules will fix this for us, but it's years in the future. If some of you are thinking about doing a bachelor work in this area, maybe this could actually be one good thing to actually do something and come up with a proposal of how to like add HTML and load other resources and JavaScript using ECMAScript modules, for instance. Yeah, so it's a tricky question. When I wrote this like 4 years ago, it was totally clear. However, with the introduction of custom elements, it's not anymore. I would like to know 1 minute, what is an event listener? What is an event listener? Good. Yeah, I thought I gave that away, so that was a good thing. It is a function added to the event queue when an event of a specific type occurs in the browser. If I could get a second advice in this course is to actually know how the event queue works. That is a key part to understanding asynchronous programming and like understanding how the browser works. Sometimes I have like this sign interpreter on my lectures because we have someone who is deaf in the audience. They don't like that option, the first one, I can tell you that. They really need to work. Okay, given code, in what order will the animals be logged? And now we need to do it like this, hopefully. So instead of showing you the answers, I will show you the code. I hope you will see this on YouTube as well. Okay. So given this code, which options do you have to select the list element with the text node second one? So basically that one. Which options do you have to select that one? You will get 1 minute. You have the options in your device as well. So it's basically the code you need to see. Five seconds. Actually, 2 minutes. 15 seconds, please vote. Okay, so looking at the results, no one believed in the first one, and that is, or almost no one, one did. That one is, I mean, we are using the hash sign, so we are trying to get an ID called second one. There is no ID with the second one in this case, so that one is ruled out. This one then, document query selector all will give us a list of elements. We want, what elements do we want? We want all list elements on the page, but we are only interested in the first one or the second one because it's the zero indexed list. So we get all the list elements and we ignore the index 0 and we get that one, so this one is correct. And 90% of you voted for that one. This one then, many of you voted for that one as well, 60 of you. This is not a trick question, but it's a tricky question. And the tricky part, what is the tricky part in that one? Anyone know? Yeah, we have text nodes in this document, and using first child will get even text nodes. So the text node is actually between the end of the UL and the beginning of the LI. So there is a row break, a \n, and there is probably tab signs or spaces or something here. So when we get first child, we get that text node. And that text node's next sibling is this list element. So we get the wrong one. And this is a very common bug in a lot of code. And that is why V3C has added the first element child. So if it said first element child, we would have gotten the first list element, and then we would have got the next sibling. Because, no, we would actually still be, no, next sibling is probably getting the right one. Or is next element sibling? I'm unsure now. Yeah. Anyways, try to use the element, the newer properties, which says element child. This one is also correct, actually. Get element by ID number list will give us the UL, and then we have a children array, a children list, and children will give you all the element children. So in that case, that will ignore all text nodes and only get the list elements. Yes?
If there's a P inside the UL, will that also get, like position 2, will that be the P?
If there is a P inside of the UL, will that also be in this children's array? Yeah. That's a good question. And why I'm hesitating is because it's not allowed to have a P inside of the UL element. So maybe the browser will get rid of the P element. Okay. You actually have to try that. If it removes the P element, it will not be there. Right. But if it doesn't remove it, it will be there.
But it's wrong.
Yeah, it's wrong. Yeah. But if the rendering engine leaves it, if it says it's okay to have it, it's wrong, but it's okay to have it, then it will show up in the children's list. If it removes it, it will not. So, but you will see that if you look at the generated source code inside of the browser, because that is the filtered view that the browser has accepted. And in the newer HTML5 versions, it's specified how the UL element should behave in that case. So you could actually go to the specification to look at that. Let's see which is the next one. Yeah, given this code, in what order will the animals be logged? So in what order will the animals be logged in the console? 1 minute. Fifteen seconds. Two minutes. Fifteen seconds, please vote. So it's dog, cat, bird. It's dog, cat, bird. And why is that? This is actually a very, very important concept when it comes to JavaScript. As I said before, try to understand how the queue works in JavaScript and the single-threaded single-threaded like JavaScript execution model. If you understand that, a lot of things will fall into place when you reason about other things, like the second assignment where you are doing networks calls, for instance. So what is happening? Okay, console log dog. So dog will be logged. That is, I think everybody is okay with that we log dog first. Then we are creating a timeout and saying that, okay, in 0 milliseconds, please execute this function. And this is where it gets confusing for many, because then you think, okay, so that basically means execute the function right away. So maybe it executes it before that line, or maybe after. Maybe it's like depends. Maybe if we set 1 millisecond, it's after, and 0, it's before. that is not the good model to program against when you can't say in which order things happen. In this case, it's totally clear what happens, because what we are saying is that set a timeout to run this function in 0 milliseconds. What the browser engine will do, or the JavaScript engine, sorry, will do is it will take this function and it will add it to the queue right away. It will like, okay, I'm adding this to the queue. And what is the queue? Well, it's the stack that is executing right now. So in this case, we're executing this code. It will not be interrupted in any way until it returns. So it will just add that function to the queue, and it will continue. It will log cat, and then this program will, or code will exit. Then the JavaScript engine will look in the queue and take the next thing in the queue, which is this function, and it will run that and log that. It's a really simple project, really simple solution. And compared to using threads like in Java, this is much easier to understand actually. But it's a totally different concept. Well, there are a lot of threads in the browser, but we don't need to know about them. We only need to focus on our queue and how to add things to the queue. So dog, cat, and bird. We'll probably have another question on this topic. What is written in the log when the button is clicked? You will get 2 minutes for this one. "15 seconds, please vote." So it's 3 o'clock. We will continue for maybe 10 more minutes. So if anyone has another lecture, you can, of course, leave. But 2-minute discussion. Thank you. Sorry. So, yes, I will shortly repeat myself. We set up event listener for the div element and the button element. And then we click the button. And then, since we haven't told the event listener if it should listen on the bubble phase or the capture phase, it's default to bubble. That means it will start by running the code for the element closest to the user, if we could say it like that. So the element closest to the mouse pointer, which in this case is the button. And then it will run this function, or it will add it to the queue, and then it will be executed. So it will log the button. We can ignore this stop propagation. What happens then is it will go bubble up in the HTML document. So it will bubble to the div element. And then it will look, do we have an event listener on the div element? Yes, we have. And then it will execute that one. And then it will go up to the body element and see if there is a click element on the body element and execute that one. It will continue like that. That is the bubble phase. After that, it will go back down, and that is the capture phase. Go back down, and look if any of the elements have an event listener on the capture phase. And you can specify that with an extra argument to the event listener. In this case, none of them has the capture set. However, in this case, since we have the e-stop propagation method called in the button basically blocks the browser from propagating this event. So in this case, we click the button, it writes the button, e-stop propagation will just stop the bubble and capture phase, and it will stop. So in this case, it will say the button. The order is a little bit hard to remember. But bubbling is quite easy to understand because it bubbles up in the HTML. Let's see if I had any more. What is wrong with this code? Yeah. What is wrong with this code? 2 minutes. Okay, 15 seconds, please vote. So for the comment that the thing that is wrong with this code is JavaScript, that is 1 minus point in the oral hearing. However, yeah, you are actually good on this one because no. oh, 70%, which is the limit, says we don't know how long the response time is, and that is correct. Will this work? Maybe, and maybe is not a good answer when it comes to programming. I mean, if whatever.com is a local server, for instance, you're working against your local on your local machine, this will probably work all 100% of the time, because you are opening a connection against your own computer and you're sending something, and you wait 1 second and then you log the response. And you will probably not have a response time of 1 second on your local computer. However, when you make this public and someone is in the US and the server is in Sweden, and there is a lot of network traffic to your server, and whoops, sometimes it will not have gone 1 second before the user gets the result, and then it will be a bug. You should never ever have code like this that is dependent on you waiting for an amount of time for a network response, because then you have just don't understand the model. What you should do is, and I hope I have a picture for that. Come on. Is that you should actually add an event listener to the load in this case, and this event listener will be called when you get a result on that. There are different ways of adding that event listener actually. I don't have this as a question. What do you think, what is wrong with this code? I will just make you raise your hands when I read the options instead. What is wrong with this code? Hands up for synchronous call should always be avoided. Well, synchronous calls should always be avoided, but there are no synchronous network calls in this case. You should always provide a callback function to the event listener. No. We are actually giving AJAX, in this case is the callback function. You need to use require AJAX. No. There are security concerns regarding the use of inner HTML, and then everybody will raise their hands. Good. Yes. It's not a good practice to just get code from another server and just inject it using inner HTML. That could actually mean that you get a lot of script elements, for instance, injected into your page. So try to avoid inner HTML. Some of you will not, and you will get punished. Remember I said that. Yep.
If we use inner HTML for something where we, for example, want to reset everything in our document, like for example say, okay, body is now empty.
Yeah. So the question is, if we're using inner HTML to set like emptying the body or emptying another element or something like that, yeah, that is totally fine. Then you're not like injecting any code. But if the thing that you are injecting in with inner HTML, if you don't have 100% control of that one, you will be in trouble. But if you control the text that you are using or the string that you are injecting with inner HTML, it's fine. If you are not, don't do it. You will be punished, and some of you will, and you will know when. Okay? Good. 12 minutes past 3. I will end the stream now, and see you Wednesday. Remember, there is a tutoring session Friday, but I cannot attend on Slack. If you have questions, feel free to post them in the Slack group. I'm trying to answer. I know there are some topics that I haven't touched upon yet. I will. They were a little bit more advanced, so I had to think about them for a while. Thank you.